Welcome to Brilliant or Bonkers, the podcast where my dad thinks every weird invention is secretly genius.
And my daughter thinks most of them are just completely bonkers.
Each week, we take one real or imagined invention from the slightly strange to the scientifically unhinged and decide if it's brilliant
Or bonkers.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Mark. And this is
Brilliant or Bonkers.
Okay, picture this. You live in a tiny 1930s apartment. You're 5 floors up, no garden, no balcony. You have a baby and it needs fresh air because the doctors are telling you fresh air is essential for strong lungs and good health.
Okay, so what do you do as parents?
Well, you hang them out the window in a metal cage.
You what?
Yep. This is a real invention, the baby cage. A wire box that you would bolt to your apartment window so your child, your baby, could literally nap outside the building. And it was perfectly normal in 1930s London and New York. Doctors approved it, housing experts recommended it, parents loved it.
That sounds insane. Bonkers even.
Well, today we are asking the big question. Was this invention, the baby cage, brilliant, solving a real city problem in a smart way?
Or completely bonkers, proving that sometimes people go a bit too far.
All right, let's dive in. All right, so today I am making the case for baby cages. I think they are brilliant. And I think we need to go back to having them. And here's why. So, what were baby cages? Well, maybe at some point on social media or the internet, you may have seen a famous picture. There's a famous picture on the internet when you search for baby cages of a cage hanging out a window of a New York apartment building, like 20 floors up at the sky. And it's basically a big cage that hangs out the window, and there's a baby in it to get some fresh air. And the idea was people really thought that babies needed fresh air to become healthy and strong. But because people didn't have balconies and there weren't a lot of parks, also, they didn't have a lot of space. So it was a perfect way for parents to put their baby outside and make sure that their baby would grow up healthy and strong and get sunlight and all that kind of stuff. And at the time, doctors and experts were convinced that fresh air was key to being healthy. So it wasn't like somebody came up with a weird idea and just took a thing out. People genuinely thought fresh air was science-based health for babies. So, brilliant idea, solves a fantastic problem, made total sense. What could you possibly have against it?
So, my first point is, I think this is the obvious point, babies dangling out a window. That's just a bit like, I would definitely not trust some metal cage bolted to the side of my apartment and shoving my baby in it, and that's just no. Second, what if the weather was or it was wet? Wouldn't the bolts just rust? And then eventually they might fall out, and that could lead to some serious injuries. Another one is, outside, if you're in New York City, there's cars, there's factories, the air's going to be really polluted. So even though your baby's getting fresh air, it's still going to be really air. The air will be polluted. So
Right.
That's my...
Okay, so your first point is, that just makes no sense. You're hanging a baby out into in a cage out a window. And you're basically saying is, well, how good is the air quality anyway? And you might get bad weather, and it's not convenient for the baby. Okay. I think, so they were invented by a woman called Emma Reed, and she had a patent in 1922. And her patent was actually quite clever. So she had secure brackets, which is basically how you attach the cage to the wall itself and to the window. The cages had wire mesh, so fresh air would go through. That was the whole idea, right? But they also had weatherproof covers. So you could, if it was raining, you could put like a weather protection over it so the baby would stay dry. So it was actually quite a clever way of doing it. And I think it's brilliant because only rich people at the time had access to gardens and outside play space. And so it basically meant that poorer people who lived in really small apartments, very high up, no lift. So, maybe you're on the 15th floor, you don't have a lift. So you got to walk up and down the stairs with a baby all the time to get some fresh air. This was a perfect way of getting the baby some fresh air. And I think the other thing to remember is it maybe sounds bonkers to you, but this was really a huge thing at the time. Fresh air was considered to be the science-based health thing. So schools would have classes outside. People slept outside whenever the weather was good. And you had a thing called a sanatorium, which was, if I can be very simple, it was like a hospital without medical attention. It was almost like a place where you could sit outside and take rest because they didn't really know what else to do. So people had this massive thing at the time about fresh air was just really, really healthy and part of being healthy and strong. So, it made sense to them.
One malfunction or one bolt going loose equals disaster. Like, if there's like a little hole in the barbed wire, I'm pretty sure a baby's brain goes, "Oh, there's a hole, let me pull at it." So they can make that hole bigger, or they can twist with the knots, or, that can happen. Then there's no constant supervision. Like right now, my age, you guys will walk to the park with me, and you can kind of let me run around. Like, you will still be there, but you don't have to constantly be staring at me. But with babies, and their brain hasn't fully developed,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have any of that. "Ooh, I should probably not hit my head on that." So there's no supervision. So that's not very.
That's a good point.
My other one is, I think everybody with common sense should have sort of realized that suspending your baby many floors up in the air is not a good idea.
I think that's a very important point, actually. And I just want to, I think, because you're right, and when I saw this picture, I laughed at first, a baby in a cage, and you're making the point, look, anybody, you don't need science to have common sense. And so anybody knows that that's not a clever thing to do. But I just think it's important to realize that it really was accepted. I was really surprised by this. I thought when I first saw this picture, this was a crazy invention, but they were used till the 1950s in London, and they were widely used. They were distributed by respected institutions, and societies thought this was very responsible behavior. So parents weren't lacking in common sense or crazy or reckless, but healthy fresh air was so important for babies that people thought it was completely normal to stick them in a cage and hang them out the window.
Okay. Well, I have a few more points to make.
Go for
First one is pigeons.
it. Okay.
Okay, so you're saying that it's going to be made out of like wire-ish material so the air can get in. That also means insects can get in, so your baby can be bitten by insects. Also, pigeons. We know how stupid pigeons are.
They are very stupid.
And so they're probably going to land on it and start pecking on it or like biting it. Or they can take a number 2 over your baby's head. So that's not very, I wouldn't want that, especially like if I went to go take my baby back in and it has a poop on his head.
So a bit like the statues that you see in market squares,
Yeah,
where the head is covered in pigeon poo.
Yeah.
That is going to be your baby when you bring it back inside.
Yeah. So, and my other point is, in 400 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
or future generations, they're going to look back at baby cages and go,
But he will. So I agree with you on this point, because we're looking at baby cages and we're thinking, what were these people thinking? Well, you are anyway. But in 100 years from today, what are we doing now that people are going to look back on and go, these people were crazy? Maybe it's social media, or maybe it's having children have access to iPads or iPhones, or who knows? There is something that we're doing now that we think is very good, or scientists or doctors say we should be doing it. And I guarantee you, one of the things we're all doing now that we think is okay, in 100 years' time, people are going to look back at us and go, what were those people thinking? So I think we have to be generous to previous generations. I want to make one very, very important.
And I'll make one last after you.
Very good. My last point, and then I'll let you make your last point. This is the core point when I saw this, and then I thought this would make a great subject, and then I did my research, right? Because you know me. There isn't one single report of a baby being injured or killed or a cage falling off a building. Not one. There is not one single report that it ever went wrong. So even though it might look crazy to you, perhaps that actually means it was brilliant. It gave babies fresh air, and there isn't one report of a baby being injured or killed. So I rest my case.
Okay, my last thing, well, sort of two last things, is you know how children take a lot from their parents? Like, if their parents are rude, the child's more likely to be rude. If the parents are successful, maybe the child will be more successful. But as a baby, you don't know anything. But when your parents shove you out in a cage outside the door, I would not trust you guys.
Okay.
So it won't give them a sense of I can trust my parents.
You don't get a sense of security.
My last one is kind of circling back to my first point.
Mm-hmm.
Dangling babies outside of your wall. Just resonate that in your head.
Okay, you stick with your core point, which is sticking a cage out your window, the 10th floor up, is not.
Yeah.
Is bonkers. Okay, well, I've made my case.
And I've made mine.
And you've made your case, and you've made it well. And I think I've done a good job. But ultimately, it is time for the judgment giraffe to tell us whether this is bonkers or brilliant. Amanda, can you describe to our listeners which way the giraffe's long neck is leaning? Is he leaning towards brilliant or bonkers?
Right. I think the giraffe's actually struggling a bit. He shouldn't be, though. Right? Yeah. It's bonkers. Not big of a surprise.
It's bonkers. Okay, well, congratulations.
Yes.
The judgment giraffe's verdict is final. I accept my defeat. Putting a cage out your window and sticking a baby in it is officially bonkers as of today. Don't do it. And that was brilliant. I really enjoyed this. Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time for another episode of
Bye-bye.
Brilliant or Bonkers. Bye-bye.